And welcome back to the Wellness Paradox podcast. I'm so grateful that you can join us on this journey towards greater human flourishing. As always, I'm your host, Michael Stack, an exercise physiologist by training and a health entrepreneur and a health educator by trade. And I'm fascinated by a phenomena I call the wellness paradox. This paradox, as I view it, is the trust, interaction, and communication gap that exists between fitness professionals and our medical community. This podcast is all about closing off that gap by disseminating the latest, most evidence-based, and most engaging information in the health sciences. And this episode brings us to episode 100. Hard to believe that we're 100 episodes into the wellness paradox. First and foremost, I want to thank each one of you, our listeners, for being with us on this incredible journey. I've learned so much from talking to all of our guests. I hope you've learned a lot from their expertise, their passion, and their desire to close off the wellness paradox. Secondly, to all of our guests, all 99 guests to this point, and all the guests that we'll have in the future, thank you so much for sharing your time, your passion, your energy, and your expertise with our audience. I look forward to seeing episode 200, 300, onward to 1,000 and beyond as we work to solve and work through the wellness paradox. Episode 100 brings us to a treat. We've actually taken 15 episodes and clipped out the answer to the question I always end the podcast on, which is, if you could give fitness professionals one piece of advice to close off the wellness paradox, what would that piece of advice be? We've taken 15 guests' responses to that, and we've brought them all together in one episode for you. So this episode is slightly longer than your normal episode, and I hope you'll indulge us with the length, because I think there's a lot to be gained from hearing all of these answers in aggregate. Truthfully, I wish I could have done all 99 guests, but we just didn't have the time to do it, and it would have been a lot of time for you to listen. So I've brought you 15 answers from 15 guests that I think you'll really enjoy. If you'd like to see the links to each one of these individual episodes, you can go to the show notes page. That's wellnessparadoxpod.com/episode 100. Please enjoy the summary of 15 answers to the question, how would you solve the wellness paradox? Episode 1, Dr. Tom Rifai.
I think, honestly, if it comes down to one simple explanation, is we have set up a culture and an environment that is causing everyone to swim upstream. We touched on this before. It's not like there aren't opportunities to be somewhat more physically active and so forth, but really they are a drop in the bucket compared to the opportunities to not move. And frankly, some of that got really bad during the pandemic and the stay-at-home orders, and the evidence on that is rather shocking. The other is obviously the food environment. You know, when you look at Okinawans, for instance, of the younger generation, let's say less than 50, versus those, and if people don't know, Okinawa is one of the so-called longevity blue zones, right, where people live longer and healthier. As long as you're in that category where the culture is so ingrained into you that the golden arches aren't attracting you like it is those all under 50. In Okinawa, those under 50 who've been really influenced by that culture and that environment from the get-go are some of the least healthy Japanese, and those over 70 healthy. But if you bring them to the United States, it's not genetics. They have the same health and outcomes as an American. It really is so influenced. Not impossible to get past it. With skill powers, you can, but our environment is set up so that it is hard to be as active as it would ideally be, and it's really more challenging to get to healthy food as it should be. Aggravated now by the pandemic, and we really are stuck in that area. What I think the only way out of it, honestly, is those people that are motivated, we keep building and we give them something that works so that there's a critical mass that starts to build and starts to lead to demands. And I have nothing to do. I'm going to give you an example because I think it's important. I have nothing to do. I have no financial relationship with Panera whatsoever. But they are actually an outlet that has found that, you know what, selling to healthy customers is making us money. They started with this secret healthy menu in a tweet years back, and many of us started to complain, stop making it a secret hidden menu. You know, put it on the menu. If people are not, they're not dumb. If they know what they're eating, it's up to them. Don't make it so hard, and they found it's working. You can now tweak your orders, and there's other places that do it too. I've worked with restaurant chains on Diamo, and area so that they all learn how they can tweak orders to individualize. And over time, maybe these kind of things will actually change the environment. We're building, I think as cities are being built, they're more conscious of walking and biking lanes. But it's, like I got to tell you, it's probably going to be a generation, maybe two. And I don't know how much what's happened over the pandemic may set us back. But that's really it. The environment is so hard to swim up against stream. But when we see the disease that's coming from it, my father has advanced dementia from his type 2 diabetes. This world-class surgeon, I'm seeing just crumble at 80, and he looks like he's 100. And we're starting to see the ramifications of this that's going to force these things to juxtaposition, that hopefully people will, if we continue to emphasize. It's a simple message. It's not maybe easy, but it's simple. The concepts you need to learn are simple, and then hopefully over time, the demand will increase and we'll start to see the environment change to support it. We may not become Okinawa or Nicoya, Costa Rica, or Sardinia, Italy, but I think we can do that. By the way, we have at least some evidence of that in our own blue zone, the Loma Linda, the Seventh-day Adventists of California, but in that area of Loma Linda, where their choices actually influence that environment, but driven by faith in their Adventist health. But they have an average lifespan that's almost a decade longer than the average American, and they're multiple ethnicities. There's Caucasians, there's African Americans, there's ASEANs, there's Latinos. So it's not a genetic issue. Genetics may load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Episode 3, Margaret Moore.
Well, we've been talking about coaching, so I think the best thing you can do is to change the conversation to be one that lights the candle or lights the fire. People have a pilot light, right? Mm-hmm. And you want that to burn a bit hotter. And that motivation comes from within. And so I think learning these skills, I mean, obviously that's self-serving because that's why I'm here to talk to you. But I think that's the most important thing, which is that it's not about the knowledge. If knowledge changed behavior, the job would be done. Mm-hmm. And so all the knowledge in the world isn't going to fix things. We have to help people cultivate the mindset to grow themselves, to expand themselves. The other thing I would say is trust that everyone is operating under their full potential. Mm-hmm. That we have way more resources and way more potential to live our fullest of lives. And so I would say, grow yourself. Just, tackle your challenges, develop yourself into a leader, develop yourself into a, someone who makes a difference. And if you focus on outcomes, then eventually the skills that you choose will be the ones that deliver better outcomes. But you're likely going to have to expand yourself too. And you probably get that having just finished coaching school, that you start asking bigger questions. Who am I? Who do I want to be? What if I didn't try to fix, rescue, and judge everybody, which is me meeting my self-determination needs? What if I actually took off that hat and started focusing on deep conversations that get people to think, to feel, to yearn, to actually engage? Much deeper conversations. And also to not be afraid of the messiness. People's lives are messy, including our own. And it's just what it is. And you've got to be okay to be there, not run away from it, not avoid it, be with people. Because one of the biggest gifts we can do is to be with people when it's hard for us, because we're tired, we don't feel like listening anymore, we're introverts, we're, whatever, we're impatient, we're, just go deeper with people and yourself. And humans grow together. And our superficial society, with all the devices and everything, we don't pull back and ask the big questions. Who do I want to be? What will I have regretted not doing on my deathbed? What is it that will make the biggest difference? How do I get out of my own way, my own ego, my own need to show how much I know? I mean, I still do it, and as soon as you tell people what you know, they say, oh, that's really nice. But you don't know me. They say that to themselves. And that's hard, right? Because you spend all this time in school learning all this stuff and they don't care. They're not interested. They just want to know you care and that you really are in their shoes with them. And that's when people will change, because they know you really are with them and you believe in them and you're not going to run away, and you're going to sit with them and help them figure it out. It's hard stuff. It's one of the hardest skill sets. And so, yeah, so just, I think those would be my main themes.
Episode 8, Dr. David Katz.
Well, if it's in their own personal lives and if it's about their own personal health, we have a set of choices, right? Feet, forks, fingers, sleep, stress, and love. The one thing I would advise everybody to do is, it's kind of like from City Slickers, for those who know the Billy Crystal movie, where the crusty trail boss says there's just one thing, but he doesn't tell you what the one thing is. That's kind of my advice. It's Curly's advice. Find the one thing. And what I mean by that is, maybe the thing that is most weighing you down is a toxic relationship. And you don't want to talk about food until you address that, or you hate your job, or you have chronic pain and can't sleep and you're exhausted all the time. Or, I don't know what the one thing is. If you were my patient, we'd figure it out together. But identify the one thing that if you could fix that, you would say, what relief. And then figure out a way to address it with help, on your own, whatever needs to happen there. And then take the oomph that you get out of fixing that first thing and invest it in fixing the next and fixing this, because all of us deserve to climb that spiral stair up to the ramparts of vitality. Again, more years in life, more life in years, healthy people have more fun. But the formula, the sequence of those steps is not a one size fits all, Michael. So, the formula is universal. The way you're talking about translating what we know into what we do, I think that's highly personal. So I would say, if you want one universal message, it is appreciate how much vitality could be worth to you and the people you love. And then figure out what is that one thing you want to start with, and then start. Because all great journeys begin with a single first step, and the sky's the limit once you get going.
Episode 23, Dr. John Berardi.
Yeah, it's a hard challenge. Early in my career, I would have had maybe a different answer than they do today. I think that I'll tackle it from a couple different angles. Angle number one is assuming that it is a good thing, that there were a deeper integration between, let's call it sort of medicine, health as medicine versus health as preventative / fitness, whatever, lifestyle management. I think there's a big assumption that it would only be a good thing if they all work together. But that's a questionable assumption. We could question that. We could ask, what would it break if they did? If that was better integrated, would it even work? There's one example that I have. I worked in elite sport for a long time. And when working with Olympic level athletes, we used to have these like high performance boards for each team, right? So one of the first teams I ever worked with, I'll use them as an example, the Canadian national cross country ski team. But every group has it: bobsled, skeleton, swimming, diving, doesn't matter, name the sport. So what they do is they have professionals who help with the teams. They have strength coaches, they have performance coaches, they have nutritionists, they have psychologists, they have their medical staff, whatever. So then periodically, let's say once a quarter, they would all sit together at a round table and they would talk about different athletes and the challenges they were having, and try and come up with a integrated treatment plan for them, or go forward plan. I remember sitting in on those and in the beginning, before I actually had any experience with them, and thinking, man, this is what it all ought to be, right? Like all the providers sitting at the table. And then I sat at a bunch of those tables, and rarely did anything meaningful come out of them. The domains are so distinct, the ways of thinking are so distinct, that even when we all sat together, it was difficult to speak the same language, to agree on a plan, right? Someone had to be made in charge of the plan, right? Because they have to decide among competing points of view, that I was like, man, I don't see a clear way for this to ever work, right? The only way it could ever work in my point of view is if we stop speaking French, German, Italian, in other words, our own discipline's jargon. And we were all trained in the same language. So then all of a sudden, do psychologists, exercise scientists, personal trainers, strength coaches, nutritionists, and medical doctors in different disciplines all have to be part of a med school? Like, are these all degrees that have to be taught in a med school? Do we do rounds together? You know what I mean? Like, it seems like an untenable problem, right? To get on the same language, to get in the same thinking. And if we did that, where would new ideas come from? If we're all taught the same language and the same thinking, then very little innovation is likely to be brought out of that. So these are some of the pros and cons that I've seen in the practice of this. Now, with that said, I remember a conversation I had with a fellow grad student of mine. Now, this person exceeds me in every way. She's amazing. She has an MD and a PhD. She has multiple gold medals at the Olympics. So she's a multiple Olympian. She's got MD, PhD. She's just the ass kicker, super high achiever person. And her graduate studies were in exercise science, and her med studies were in sort of rehabilitative medicine. And I remember meeting with her because, see, I got out sooner than her because, I didn't have to go the whole MD route after I finished my PhD, and I had a business. And so she called me and said, let's sit down and chat. Like, I want to think about what's next for my career. And I remember having these mixed feelings because what her goal was to sort of promote exercise as medicine, right? And I'm like, there couldn't be a better spokesperson for this, right? Multiple time Olympian, MD, PhD in exercise. Like, you're the person to do this, right? The idea being, how do we achieve this thing, like resolve the paradox in some ways, right? How do we integrate exercise and lifestyle and prevention into medicine? And I remember this question occurred to me, which was, you, my friend, will probably spend the rest of your career, every minute of your career, simply trying to make headway on this. Like, you're not going to solve the problem in your career. It's too fast of a timeline, right? And when you die or retire, will you be okay knowing that almost nothing has changed, right? Like, there have to be pioneers, there have to be these people breaking new ground. Like, maybe you'll have moved the needle, or maybe you'll simply have inspired a next generation to take the baton and work on this. But are you cool spending, let's say, the next 40 years, 50 years, maybe, knowing that you're going to work on a thing that is the infrastructure is so ingrained that it's not going to change in your lifetime? This is something to think about before you go down this path, right? And I don't mean to seem negative about it. I hope I don't sound too excessively pessimistic, but I think that's the reality with machines like this. They don't change in a lifetime. They change in multiple lifetimes. If exercise and sleep and stress management are ever fully integrated into the medical paradigm, you and I won't see it in our lifetime, my friend. We will be long dead. Our children may not see it in their lifetime. Now, that's not to say don't work on it, right? Because the only way change happens is through people working on it. But to put into context what I'm saying here, my answer is I don't think we'll see it in our lifetime. It's going to take a special group of people who probably have a kind of fortitude and being determined, more than I have, to push it forward. What that looks like, have no idea. Imagine, like, we're talking about maybe 2 generations into the future. Who knows what medicine or exercise look like at that time? But it is going to take some loud voices of people who are highly reputable. Like, even me, I could make no headway into it, because when I show up and I don't have an MD, people will be like, like, I didn't understand medicine, right? It takes someone super special, like my friend, who has an MD and can say, no, I'm credible in that world, who has training in exercise science and lifestyle and preventative, and has credibility in that world, and maybe even has a couple Olympic medals, right? So they're a celebrity, to push this kind of thing forward. So Now, that's my pseudo pessimistic, super long timeline. Haven't seen it work before in the context where it actually has a chance of working answer. But again, for people who've done this work, like what's my purpose? What's my unique abilities? What's my values, right? So this friend of mine, that answer, this exercise is medicine work, answers those. It is her purpose. It is her values. It is her unique abilities. For people who have that, then they go work on that, like that. But that brings us back to where we started, right? If those aren't your purpose, unique abilities, and values, do something else, because it's going to be thankless work,
Episode 29, Adam Schafer.
Be patient. It's coming. So it is coming, man. So we're angel investors in companies, right? So one of the companies that we're invested in is a company called Luna, which is basically the Uber of healthcare. You're going to be able to bypass your general practitioner. Like right now, if you've had chronic shoulder pain, you can't get to the bottom of it. It hurts really bad. Maybe every once in a while, all you do is do cortisone shots, and that's kind of your remedy for it, which we both know that's not ideal. And if you wanted to see a physical therapist, you got to go see your GP. Then he goes and gives you a prescription. Then you go do it. It's this long, unfortunate thing. Well, Luna is a company that is completely cut out the middleman. You'll be able to go directly to them. You will not need a referral to do that. It'll be cheaper and more convenient. The actual physical therapist will come assess you at your house and tell you what you need to do as far as rehab, and or actually take you through sessions where they'll show up to your house and it'll look just like the Uber app. So, we're starting, and they're wanting, the reason why they've connected with us is we see an opportunity for the post rehab, how to do that. We wrote 2 digital programs, MAPS Prime and MAPS Prime Pro, which probably sounds confusing to somebody who has no idea what that is, but it really was the bridge between a rehab client and then like a normal personal training client. We saw there was a major gap there, kind of speaking to what you already know, is that we haven't really done a good job of bridging that. We try to do that digitally, like for a program. Like, what do? You just got out of rehab for your knee surgery. You need to get into weight training, stuff like that, but you're kind of afraid to go hire some 24-hour fitness trainer to work you out. So we wrote a program that addresses all of that. And that's our MAPS Prime Pro program. And so we're working with Luna to probably do some of that. There's another company, it's slipping my mind right now, that is basically an app that allows the general practitioner, the chiropractor, physical therapist, trainer, all to communicate in one hub about a client. So let's say you hire a client and they have this app also. Now, all the notes from the doctor, all the notes from the physical therapist, all the notes from the doctor are all from the trainer are all in one central place. So all of us can review together. Until all this stuff comes full circle, my advice is going back to the Maven thing. Sal was really good at this. I was really good at this. So was Justin. Was we built relationships with a lot of these partners. You asked me a chiro, I've got the best. You asked me a physical therapist, I've got the best. You asked me a nutritionist, I've got the best. And that's just from years of finding out who's the best at their craft in the area, coming to them. And by the way, coming to them, not asking for anything, providing them value by sending them clients because they do such a great job. And what ends up happening, they reciprocate that. Eventually what happens is they recognize how professional you are, how much value you are to their business. And what ends up happening, it starts coming back the other direction. I've got this PT that I always send my clients that have got chronic stuff that I can't get to the bottom of, and he helps them out. In turn, when he's got people that are ready to go to the gym and go working out, he's sending them my way. So, until we get the, sophisticated apps and we all really start to merge, which I want to believe the future of Eastern medicine, Western medicine, all these different practitioners. I mean, my hopes is that it all kind of merges together one day to truly help someone. And I like to think that Mind Pump's voice is a lot of that. Like, we try and bring that to our community by highlighting all those areas. Like, we speak to Western medicine, we talk to Eastern medicine, and we have these professionals on there, and we try to educate our audience. So until the apps and things like that get up to speed, and we have things like that already for everybody, that it's a household name. I mean, get out there as coaches and trainers and build those relationships yourself. I remember when I was first doing this, I would go, even though I didn't need a chiropractor, I'd go pay for sessions so I could hear the way he communicates to me, what he would take me through. And then I could assess like, oh yeah, that guy's really good. Or not going to be sending any of my people that way. And that's an investment. I'm not making any money off that. I'm losing money by doing that. But I knew there was tremendous value in me building relationships like that so that I can then refer to my people. And again, if you become this person, and this should be a goal of all coaches and trainers, Sal's talked about this on our show before, you've done a really good job of providing value for someone's life because there's two things that happen in your story arch of a trainer. When I was really young, clients would call, like if a client gets hurt, client gets sick, they call me in and they cancel their session. Hey, Adam, like, oh, I hurt my knee. Something happened. Can we reschedule for next week? Or, hey, Adam, I'm not feeling so well. Can we reschedule? And that's when you're early on in your career. That's a normal thing that happens. So, this is not knocking anybody that happens to. Later on in your career, you become the guy or the girl where they get sick, they get hurt, and they call you and they want to see you. They want to come in because they want to hear what you're going to say to them. They want to get the advice from you or the direction on what you should do because you've already proven to them that if you're not the guy, you've got the guy or girl who can help them. And so they're not going to miss out on their meeting you this week because they don't feel good or they're hurt or something happened they can't get to the bottom of, and you're the person that they trust to give them that advice. That is a really good goal as a coach or trainer, is to reach that level. It's hard to do it through your own education and knowledge only. So branch out and connect yourself, build relationships with those in other fields and expertise.
Episode 33, Dr. Amy Bamtham.
I think we've covered it with building trust, building relationships, building trusted relationships. I think that people are really recognizing the importance of trust during the pandemic, and we can be trusted partners with healthcare, with schools, with businesses, with public health officials. So how do we get there?
Episode 35, Dr. Michelle Seeger.
Well, I can't give you a pithy answer because I think it represents everything we've been talking about on the show today. Healthcare professionals are in need of a reframe too. So I think, potentially the fitness and wellness professional can help, if they can help the healthcare provider and the healthcare system understand where things fall down when it comes to exercise, that they in this role of educator and change agent can build trust within the healthcare system.
Episode 52, Dr. Barry Franklin.
Two words, mutual respect. The medical professional has to recognize that the health fitness professional has knowledge, skills, and abilities that can enhance their client or their patient. Exercise is medicine, and they have a good feel for that, and they should respect that. Just the same, the health fitness professional has to respect the medical community and the physician who may know things about the patient that would preclude vigorous exercise or preclude certain types of activities that would normally be proscribed or contraindicated. So I think that is first and foremost, mutual respect. And secondly, I think it's critically important, and I say this to our cardiologists and physicians all the time, you read a 30-page report in the journal Circulation, and it's got all these abbreviations and this and that. What's the take-home message for the guy who's coming to the YMCA or the local gym or whatever? We need to do a better job taking that 30 pages. And by the way, very few doctors read the whole damn thing. It's the abstract or the final concluding thing. But the real key is, how do you take those data and transform them into the practical implications for the patient? There are a few publications that do that. One of them, I'm biased, and I'll say, full disclosure, I'm on their editorial board. It's not a paid thing, is the ACSM Health and Fitness Journal. Brad Roy does a nice job. We just had a couple of things accepted, and they required 3 revisions before it got there. So they're really, really very good at taking science, clinical data, and transforming it into usable, practical recommendations. So I think both of those things really address the conundrum that you're talking about.
Episode 57, Dr. Melissa Sunderman.
I'm going to come back to the concept of a wheel with spokes, okay? And we in lifestyle medicine, we see this every day. And I'm going to say that in order for a body to function the best it can, is all those spokes need to have their role, okay? And so as much as you in the fitness industry are like, exercise is the most important thing. And I think on the medicine side, people are like, yeah, you need to take your drugs and medicine. If we think about these spokes, these pillars of wellness medicine, of lifestyle medicine, as equally important and respecting their role, I think that bridges the gap. I also think the beauty of lifestyle medicine, and every practitioner I have met who does lifestyle medicine, is that we practice what we preach.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the life I live, right? I am not sitting there telling you, Mike, as my patient, well, I want you to exercise. I want you to sleep. And I'm not perfect by no stretch of the means,
Right.
but I do my best to actually practice these pillars. And you're not going to find me on my, my lunch break going out to McDonald's and chowing down some French fries and then, like smoking a cigarette. So I think that too is really important, that we in the fitness industry and in, I'm going to say lifestyle medicine industry, that we practice what we preach. Absolutely. So that we can relate to our fellow colleagues, and then just learning from each other. Like, for instance, this podcast, right? So you're in the fitness industry, exercise, very successful business owner. I'm in the medical business, but we learn from each other. I listen to podcasts all the time. I go to conferences, and just learning what each other does. Like when I did that integrative medicine fellowship, prior to that, I'm like, I have no idea what homeopathy is, but it sounds really quacky. And so it wasn't until I learned about it that I was like, oh, I could see that maybe there's a role for that, you know, and I'm not going to be ignorant. So a lot of times when we don't know things, we're ignorant and we say, it's a bunch of quackery, right? So I think it's really important to respect your training, your background, and equally that, we have mutual respect and we want to learn from each other and we create synergy.
Episode 60, Dr. Renee Rogers.
Let go of your brand. Your fitness persona needs to really be brought down, and you need to come in as what is best for your patient. I'm here to serve your patient. And I think that's a really hard space. And I found this to be difficult at first when I was in the medical fitness space, because it almost felt like the three of us, the dietitian, the behavioral psychologist, and myself, we were almost competing with time on the medical team. Yeah. But when we started to really interact as team members together and have really integrative conversations, all of a sudden our clients took off. Yeah. And when we took the I out of the conversation, or my method, my way, this is how I do things. And it really became about, when I work with a patient, the patient tells me X, I respond with Y. Yeah. Those are the kinds of conversations that I really found to be effective with clinicians and build the best work. And I know that I've done a lot of work. I've presented the ADA clinical conference and other spaces like that, where I've heard from clinicians over the years say things like, well, I don't have the trust because I feel like the fitness pro is going to take their bias or their method and lay it on top of my patient. And that's not always right for my patient. Mm-hmm. So I think really starting conversations, when you go in to have those bridging conversations, making sure the I is very far from the discussion. And it's really about we or the patient first.
Episode 63, Dr. John Jakizik.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the $10 billion question, right? And I think that one way to do that is make sure that, I don't want to say you're credentialed, but to make sure that you have the street cred when it comes to bridging that gap. Medical professionals have gone through this extensive training, and they have their way of, they're thinking in a medical way. So how can you make sure that when you present yourself to them, that they're like, this person knows what they're talking about. They respect the fact that this patient that I'm dealing with has a lot of other stuff happening. And so I think that, having that layer of respect, as opposed to saying everybody's here, to compete in a marathon or in a 10K or something, really adds to this idea that, you're in it for the care of the patient. Because at the end of the day, that's what the medical community is thinking about. So really making sure that you're giving that persona, which is really important, lets them know that you understand that it's different than training someone for an event. You're now dealing with a patient. And I think if we can think about it from that perspective a little bit, that's going to add some street cred to what we do.
Episode 67, Robin Stir.
Oh my gosh. Let's see. Be aware that physicians and clinicians don't have a lot of time. So make yourself valuable. Ask yourself, how can I help them? How can I help their patients? It's not about me. It's how can I make their life easier? And if you approach it that way, and learn ahead of time what their practice is and what kind of patients they see, and you feel like there's a match, then point that out.
Episode 80, David Flench.
Yeah, that's really a great question, because you're right. There tends to be this gap, and there really shouldn't be. When you think about it, we're all trying to get people healthy, or get people back to health, and So, but I would say the one thing I would look to is to build some relationships with healthcare providers. So oftentimes a lot of these people are working out in a fitness center already, and those people are great people to start with, because not only are they, doctors and nurses and physical therapists and, all kinds of other healthcare providers, but they're interested then in their personal health and fitness. And so I'd say, starting with those types of people, a relationship that's built like that can really break down walls and minimize that gap. And so once you get to know somebody and understand what they do, it's also educating them on what you do. Right. And so what are your qualifications? What are some of the outcomes you're seeing with the members in your programs? And how can you help them? One thing that we did at Hancock is I thought it was great. When a physician started working at the hospital, they went through an orientation. So a bunch of department heads came in and talked about their services, and we had the opportunity to do that with our wellness centers. And so you really got to let them understand we're not just any old place. Here are some of our qualifications, and then giving them some of the results from our programs. We had one program that we were able to show a reduction in hypertension by, it was some crazy amount, 40-some% or something like that within the first few months, and so it's very comparable to what a person could achieve through medication. And so the point was, let us be part of the solution. Let us be part of how we can help you and your patients, and we're getting very good results. So I think doing that, we oftentimes would invite people to experience something themselves. So come over for this program. We'll show you what the intake looks like. That didn't always happen for the busiest of folks, but that type of thing really helps build these relationships that are needed to close a gap. But I'll say as a caveat, you better have high quality programs, and you better have well credentialed staff, and be able to provide their patients an exceptional experience, and be able to deliver on what you're promising. Because if you don't have that in place, and you try to just get referrals, that's not going to go well for you. You know, that's a short sighted strategy. So I'd say really you got to work on building up these things, and then, you know, build that relationship. And once you have both a good relationship with healthcare providers, and you've got a great quality program with staff that, you know, put it into place that are just, you know, awesome staff, then, you know, that's when we're singing Kumbaya, and you know, the stars align, and things work really well.
Bill, episode 83, Ryan DeLucia.
Yep, another great question. You know, so the difficult part is, of course, each side, I think, looks at the other side a little bit kind of with disdain. Like, you know, the medical professionals, of course, looking at people selling, you know, scammy supplements or giving people advice that's not going to actually help them. And of course, the fitness side is thinking, hey, you know, we want to be preventative. We don't want to just give people a drug. Or on the other side, I understand, like from the medical side, it's like people come in asking for the drug, you know, because you tell them till you're blue in the face that you know, exercise and eat right. Not a lot of people want to hear that, or they don't adhere to it. You know, even adherence to prescription medication is shockingly low. It's like, hey, you're gonna die or have serious issues if you don't take this on the schedule, and people still don't do it. It's such a difficult problem. I would say from the fitness industry side, we definitely want to be looking at more evidence-based routines and behavior modification techniques. It's so easy. I mean, you almost feel a little bit for fitness professionals, because if you just tell somebody like you just need to just do squats, deadlifts, bench press, you know, blah, blah, do that, you know, 3 to 5 times per week and eat chicken and broccoli, like you can't sell that as an ebook, or, you know, that you have to have, you know, you almost have to have like this secret sauce that people are going to have to pay you $99 for your ebook or your services. And it does make it so if you don't have that, it's very difficult. But the people that are going to thrive are going to be the ones that are going to give people results, because most people learn about fitness programs, supplements, diets that they actually want to buy, like through other people, through friends. And that's even at the bottom of the comment, I always say, like, I hear about new supplements every single day, of course. They'd be pitched to me from all these different things, and I wouldn't really pay that much attention. Okay, that sounds good. But then I'd go into the break room and my friend would be taking this new stuff. Like, what is that? And he'd say, oh man, this is the best pre-workout ever. Now that's the one I'm buying. If you can give people actual results, as sad as it is, that's going to set you apart using those evidence-based systems. And that will help you grow long-term.
Episode 89, Dr. Kenneth Cooper.
I think that physical professionals have become more involved in some medical training, more education as far as exercise physiology, and where that means, I know some of them are nutrition, they may not have that. And some of the things we're teaching and preaching, getting Cooperized, to get them involved, get the professionals that feel. We have over 20 full-time professional trainers here, and they're doing extremely well because they've embraced the concept that exercise is medicine. And so the two do go together. Now, that's the coin that we use. Dr. Ted Mitchell is now the chancellor of Texas Tech, who worked for me for 20 years, the CEO of our clinic here. He used that in the presentation of our College of Sports Medicine. Aerobics, that exercise is medicine. Now that has been the byword for the American College of Sports Medicine, exercise is medicine. So get that together. Get the physical educate people involved in more medical training, and get the medical doctors more involved in exercise training. We got to get that paradox out of the way. And we can do that because I know we're getting more and more physicians want to get involved in the work we're doing here. That's why I'm getting all these invitations to speak. But I want to do that, I've mentioned several times, with these documentaries we're working on. So I think that can be a giant step in the proper direction. But it may be mandated by the people, not led by the physician. Because, you know, people don't change our problem with with problems. What the government demands we do, it's what we decide to do for ourselves. The government's not going to do it. And so we have to do this ourselves. But I found that the patients come back, as I said, because it's that we come back for a very comprehensive examination, because we've proven over the years we can prevent Alzheimer's dementia, do things like that. If we can't prevent Alzheimer's and cancer, but for Alzheimer's and cancer, we can reduce the likelihood of it by having this very comprehensive examination. But it has to be an educational motivation experience. We only see 4 patients a day, because our physicians spend an hour and a half with these patients, because we want to educate and motivate our patients. That's why they come back, get up-to-date information when we're talking about, and give them recommendations that are safe, effective, and realistic. Don't tell them things that are totally unrealistic. They'll discourage them, they'll never come back, but then get them back. That's the 4-step improvement. That's a 4-step program that we use to try to get our patients involved in our programs. And that's why 74% of return patients. So to get that message across, to the physical education community. Get that medication, that presentation that I've done into the field of physical education. Maybe you'll find more physician medical societies want some of the people from the physical education society, or physical exercise physiology society to lecture to their donors. I've done that to medical groups already. Of course, I'm a physician, I can identify with it, but have an outsider. But one time I'm telling these physical education people, the best thing to prevent progression of Parkinsonism is exercise. Do you know that? That's the only thing that has really been proven. That exercise can slow down the progression of Alzheimer's. That's why we have a program here at our Center for Alzheimer's Patients. It's a dance patient, and we've seen that improvement. So you people out there in physical education ought to start branching out to other things. On the top of that list may be special programs for people with Alzheimer's.
Mm-hmm.
We're working at the Atlantic Club down in New Jersey. It's recent. We have a program down there with our concepts program and all. And I was pleased to see they have a very dynamic program for Alzheimer's, for Parkinson's patients, because they've shown the same thing that we're seeing. You can slow down and even reverse some of those changes that people get when they get something you get from Parkinson's disease. They don't know that. And so some of these things, and I said the possibility of reducing Alzheimer's dementia by just controlling weight and exercising. Why don't they know that in the physical education field? And so go on your own there and start doing some studies among the members of your club and document the people that are following your programs. Do they get chronic diseases? Are they seeing the same thing we're seeing? They're prolonging lives, reducing death from all causes. So you might want to get some research involved in some of these physical education programs, health clubs around the country, around the world. So I think there's a bridge we're beginning to back there. For years, I've been trying to bridge the gap between faddism and scientific legitimacy using exercise and practice of medicine. But now the results are too impressive to be ignored.
Well, I hope you enjoyed all that amazing insight from 15 of our guests. If you found that insightful and informative, please share with your friends and colleagues. Those shares, as always, make a huge difference for us. Again, the links from this episode that can be found in the show notes page are the links to each one of these guests' podcasts. That can be found on wellnessparadoxpod.com/episode 100. As we reach the century mark, once again, I say thank you to all of you for listening. Please be on the lookout for our next episode when it drops in 2 weeks. And don't forget to subscribe through your favorite podcast platform. Until we chat again next, please be well